My mom used her emergency key to break into my house and give my sister my office, so I installed a $2,400 biometric lock system and filmed her trying to pick it. Hi everyone! Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. Original post. I'm James, 31M, and I need to share how I finally solved my family's chronic boundary crossing problem with a solution they never saw coming. For context, I work as a software architect from home, running my own consultancy that brings in about $180,000 annually. I bought my house 3 years ago, a modest 3-bedroom place in suburban Connecticut that I've carefully set up for my lifestyle and work needs. My home office is my sanctuary. It's where I've invested nearly $30,000 in equipment. Dual ultra-wide monitors, a standing desk, professional lighting for video calls, soundproofing panels, and servers for my development work. Every cable is managed, every tool has its place, and the entire room is calibrated for maximum productivity. This isn't just a room with a desk, it's the nerve center of my business. My mother Patricia, 53F, has always had trouble understanding boundaries. She's the type who believes family means unlimited access to everything: your time, your space, your resources. Growing up, privacy was considered selfishness in our household. My younger sister Ashley, 24F, inherited this mindset, though amplified by being the baby of the family who never heard no without it eventually becoming yes after enough tears or tantrums. The current conflict started 6 weeks ago when Ashley graduated from college with a degree in marketing. She moved back home with our parents, claiming she needed time to find herself and explore opportunities. In reality, she spends most days on TikTok, occasionally applying for jobs she's too good for, while complaining that entry-level positions don't pay enough for the lifestyle she deserves. 3 weeks ago, my mother called with her usual manipulation tactics. James, honey, Ashley really needs a proper workspace for her job search. You have that big office all to yourself, and family helps family, doesn't it? She could just use it during the hours you're not working. I explained that I work irregular hours, often having calls with international clients at odd times. My office contains confidential client data, expensive equipment, and a carefully maintained environment essential for my work. The answer was no. You're being selfish, Patricia said, her voice dripping with disappointment. We sacrificed so much for you growing up. Is it too much to ask that you help your sister when she needs it? It's just temporary. The word temporary triggered alarm bells. In our family, temporary meant until I don't feel like leaving anymore. My cousin Michael had a temporary stay with my parents that lasted 3 years. My Aunt Linda's temporary storage in their garage is still there after a decade. Mom, I've already explained why that won't work. Ashley is welcome to use the kitchen table, the living room, or even the guest bedroom if she needs space for job hunting. Those aren't professional enough, she protested. How is she supposed to do video interviews with kitchen noise in the background? You're sabotaging your sister's future. The guilt trips intensified over the following days. My father called, disappointed in my lack of family values. Ashley sent passive-aggressive texts about how some people forget where they came from. Extended family members began reaching out, having heard Patricia's version of events where I was the successful son refusing to help his struggling sister. Then came the breaking point. I returned from a coffee run to find my mother and Ashley in my house. They'd used the spare key I'd given them for emergencies. Ashley was sitting at my desk, her Starbucks dangerously close to my mechanical keyboard, while Patricia was tidying up, moving things around. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to control my anger. "Oh, James." Patricia smiled as if nothing was wrong. "We thought we'd just show Ashley the space so she could see how she could use it without disturbing your things. See? She fits perfectly." Ashley spun in my $1,200 Herman Miller chair, her feet up on my desk. "This is amazing, James. I promise I'll be super careful with everything. You won't even know I was here." I saw red. The disrespect, the invasion, the complete dismissal of my clearly stated boundaries, it all crystallized into a moment of clarity. I couldn't rely on their respect for my wishes. I needed a solution they couldn't manipulate, guilt-trip, or ignore. "Both of you out. Now," I said quietly. "James, don't be dramatic," Patricia started. "Out," I shouted, surprising even myself. "This is breaking and entering. That key was for emergencies only. Leave it on the counter and get out of my house." They left, Patricia tearfully calling me heartless while Ashley muttered about my selfishness. But I knew this wouldn't be the end. They'd proven they couldn't respect verbal boundaries, so I needed physical ones. That night, I researched biometric lock systems. I found a commercial-grade solution, a door lock with fingerprint recognition, PIN backup, and remote monitoring. It cost $2,400 installed, but I considered it an investment in my sanity. The system logs every entry attempt, sends alerts to my phone, and can even capture photos of anyone trying to access the door. I also installed a steel-reinforced door frame and a solid core door rated for commercial use. If they couldn't respect my boundaries, I'd make them physically impossible to cross. The contractor I hired mentioned it was the kind of setup they usually installed for server rooms or high-security offices. Perfect. But I didn't stop there. I installed a camera system covering my driveway, front door, and hallway leading to my office. Everything feeds to a NAS with encrypted cloud backup. I drafted a formal letter with the help of my lawyer friend, explicitly revoking any implied permission for entry to my property except when explicitly invited. The entire setup took a week to complete. During that time, the family pressure campaign intensified. Text messages, calls, and even a visit from my Aunt Diane trying to mediate. I grey-rocked them all, giving non-committal responses while my fortress was being built. Update 1. The discovery, 2 weeks later. The biometric system has been active for 5 days, and the explosion I anticipated finally happened. Patricia had apparently been planning a surprise visit to work things out like adults. She brought Ashley and, to my surprise, my grandmother Elizabeth, 77F, clearly thinking I wouldn't make a scene in front of Grandma. I watched the whole thing unfold on my phone while I was at a client's office downtown. The Ring doorbell showed them arriving at 10 a.m., Patricia confidently walking to the door with her copy of my key. She'd made one before returning the spare, as I suspected she would. The key turned in the lock, but the door didn't open. The biometric system had engaged the electronic deadbolt. I watched Patricia's confusion turn to frustration as she tried the key multiple times. "His door is broken," I heard her tell Ashley through the doorbell speaker. They spent 5 minutes trying to force it before Patricia called me. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. "James, honey, your door seems to be stuck. We're here to talk and maybe help clean your house. Call me back." 20 minutes later, another call. This time, she'd noticed the new keypad next to the door. "James, what is this thing on your door? Your grandmother is here and we can't get in. This is ridiculous. Call me immediately." I texted back, "I'm in a meeting. The door is working as intended. I did not invite you over. Please leave." The explosion was immediate. My phone rang 15 times in the next 10 minutes. Texts poured in. "Patricia, what do you mean working as intended? Ashley, are you seriously locking us out? Grandma is literally here. Patricia, this is my son's house. I have a right to check on you. Ashley, you're really showing your true colors. Selfish AF." I watched them on the camera for another 20 minutes. Patricia tried to peer through windows. Ashley attempted to shame me on her Instagram story, which I saw because my cousin Nicholas sent me screenshots, and my grandmother sat in the car, looking confused. Finally, they left. But Patricia wasn't done. That evening, she enlisted my father Robert to call me. "Son, what's this about some kind of lock?" he asked, sounding tired. "I've upgraded my home security, Dad. After Mom and Ashley broke into my office without permission, I realized I needed better boundaries." Broke in. They had a key. A key for emergencies. Entering my home uninvited to take over my office isn't an emergency. It's trespassing. He sighed heavily. "Your mother is very upset. She feels like you're treating them like criminals. They entered my home without permission after I explicitly told them no." "What would you call that?" "Family," he said, but even he sounded uncertain. The next few days brought a parade of flying monkeys. My Uncle Gary called to lecture me about family values. My cousin Jennifer texted that I was breaking Patricia's heart. My Aunt Sharon even suggested I needed therapy for my control issues. But the biometric lock held firm. My office remained my office, and I slept better than I had in years. Update 2. The escalation, 1 month later. Things got worse before they got better. Patricia, denied physical access, escalated to what I can only describe as psychological warfare. She started calling my clients. She'd found their names on my LinkedIn, introducing herself as my mother and checking in on their satisfaction with my work. 2 clients called me, confused about why my mother was asking if I was mentally stable and dealing with family stress appropriately. I had to do damage control, explaining to my clients that I was dealing with a family member who had boundary issues. Thankfully, both clients were understanding. One even shared his own nightmare mother-in-law story. But I knew this couldn't continue. I sent Patricia a cease and desist letter via certified mail. My lawyer friend, Daniel, helped me draft it, outlining that any further contact with my clients would be considered tortious interference with my business relationships. I also made it clear that any attempt to enter my property without explicit invitation would result in criminal trespassing charges. Patricia's response was to show up at my house with what I can only describe as an intervention squad. Through my cameras, I watched as she arrived with Ashley, my aunts Sharon and Diane, and, inexplicably, our former neighbor Mrs. Henderson, who moved away 5 years ago but apparently still keeps in touch with Patricia. They rang the doorbell for 10 minutes. When I didn't answer, I was home, working in my biometrically secured office. Patricia actually had the audacity to try picking the lock. I have it all on camera. My 53-year-old mother crouched at my door with bobby pins she'd pulled from her purse, while Ashley Googled how to pick locks on her phone. I called the police. I didn't want to, but they'd forced my hand. I explained the situation to the dispatcher, mentioned the cease and desist letter, and asked for officers to remove the trespassers from my property. When the police arrived, Patricia tried to explain that she was my mother, that this was a family matter, that she was just concerned about her son. The officer, a no-nonsense woman named Officer Martinez, asked Patricia a simple question, "Ma'am, did your son invite you here today?" "Well, no, but..." "Then you need to leave. He's asked you to go, and if you don't comply, you'll be arrested for trespassing." The look on Patricia's face was something I'll never forget, a mixture of shock, indignation, and the dawning realization that her usual tactics weren't working. Ashley started recording, threatening to expose me on social media for calling the police on my own mother. Officer Martinez calmly informed her that she was welcome to record, but they still needed to leave immediately. They left, but not before Patricia shouted at my Ring doorbell, "I'm done with you. You're no son of mine." The family explosion was nuclear. My phone blew up with messages ranging from disappointment to outrage. My dad called me, for once, genuinely angry. "You called the police on your mother?" "I called the police on trespassers who were attempting to break into my home," I corrected. "That's your mother. And that's my house. Dad, I've tried everything else. I've explained, I've set boundaries, I've sent legal letters. What else was I supposed to do?" He didn't have an answer. The unexpected ally came from my grandmother. She called me that evening, and I braced for another guilt trip. Instead, she said, "James, your mother told me what happened. She also told me about the locks and the police." "Good for you." I was speechless. "Your mother has always been pushy," Elizabeth continued. "I love her, but she doesn't understand that her children are adults with their own lives. I had to put my foot down with her many times when you were young. Stand your ground." It was the validation I didn't know I needed. Update 3. The manipulation campaign, 2 months later. After the police incident, Patricia went into what I call scorched earth mode. She couldn't physically access my space, couldn't guilt me into compliance, and couldn't use family pressure effectively anymore. So she tried to hit me where she thought it would hurt, my reputation. She started a whisper campaign in our extended social circle. At my cousin Tyler's birthday party, which I didn't attend, having seen the writing on the wall, she apparently spent the entire evening telling anyone who would listen about her mentally unstable son who had cut off his family and called the police on his own mother. She painted herself as the victim of an ungrateful child who had forgotten his roots the moment he found success. The story, in Patricia's version, conveniently omitted several key facts: that Ashley had been trying to commandeer my office, that they'd entered my home without permission, that I'd tried every other form of boundary setting first. In her narrative, she'd simply been trying to help Ashley, and I'd responded by installing prison locks and treating them like criminals. Some people bought it. I started getting messages from high school acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years, reaching out to check if I was okay, and offering to mediate with my family. My barber mentioned that my mom had been in his shop, crying about our estrangement. The local coffee shop owner asked if everything was all right at home. But here's the thing about lies: they require constant maintenance. Patricia's story kept changing depending on her audience. To some, I was mentally ill. To others, I was being controlled by a girlfriend, I was single. To yet others, I joined some kind of cult that promoted cutting off family. Ashley, meanwhile, had taken to social media with a vengeance. She posted TikToks about toxic family members, clearly about me, tweeted about the trauma of being rejected by a sibling, and even started a YouTube channel called Healing from Family Betrayal, where she dispensed advice despite having zero qualifications or life experience. The turning point came when Ashley made a crucial mistake. In one of her TikToks, she actually showed footage she'd secretly recorded in my office during their uninvited visit. She meant to show how unreasonable I was being about sharing the space, But what viewers saw was a professional office with expensive equipment, client information visible on monitors, and her feet up on the desk while holding a Starbucks. The comments were not what she expected. "Wait, so you broke into his office without permission? Girl, that's clearly a professional workspace, not a spare room." The entitlement is strong with this one. Imagine thinking you're entitled to someone else's home office just because you're related. She deleted the video within hours, but the internet never forgets. Someone on Reddit found it and posted it to r/entitled people, where it went modestly viral. My side of the story finally had some visibility. I didn't engage with any of it publicly. I continued working, growing my business, and living my life. The biometric lock logged several more attempts by Patricia to access my home, always when she thought I wasn't there. Each attempt was documented, filed away in case I needed a restraining order. My father, Robert, tried to mediate one more time. He came over alone, and I actually let him in, though not into the office. "Son, this has gone too far," he said, looking older than his 55 years. "Your mother is driving herself crazy over this. She can't sleep, she's not eating well. Is a room really worth all this?" "Dad, it's not about the room. It's about respect. If I give in now, what's next? Ashley moves in temporarily. Mom starts redecorating my house. You all have keys and come and go as you please. Where does it end?" He was quiet for a long moment. "You know, when we first got married, your grandmother Elizabeth used to just walk into our apartment whenever she felt like it. Drove your mother crazy. And how did you handle it?" "We moved 2 states away," he admitted with a rueful smile. "But that was different." "How?" He didn't have an answer. Before he left, he said something that surprised me. "The locks, they're actually pretty cool. Very high-tech." It wasn't approval, exactly, but it wasn't condemnation either. Final update. Resolution, 4 months later. I'm writing this final update from my still secure office, coffee in hand, morning light streaming through the windows. 4 months have passed since I installed the biometric locks, and the landscape has changed dramatically. Ashley, faced with the reality that she couldn't guilt her way into my office, was forced to actually figure out her life. After her TikTok disaster, she quietly deleted most of her social media presence and, shock of all shocks, got a job. It's entry-level marketing at a small firm, exactly the kind of position she'd previously considered beneath her. But when the bank of Mom and Dad finally instituted some boundaries of their own, inspired, Robert later told me, by my example, she had no choice but to adult. The plot twist. She's actually good at it. Her boss, whom I met at a chance encounter at Whole Foods, mentioned that Ashley was creative and driven. When I ran into Ashley at that same store a week later, she looked different. More mature. The entitled princess energy had been replaced by something resembling actual confidence. "James," she said, spotting me by the produce section. "Ashley." We stood there awkwardly for a moment before she said, "I got my own place. A studio apartment downtown. It's small, but it has a nice corner where I set up a desk." "That's great," I said, and meant it. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "About everything. The office, the social media, all of it. I was being a brat." I nodded. "Thank you for saying that. The biometric lock thing was actually genius," she admitted with a small laugh. "I told my therapist about it, and she said you were establishing firm boundaries in a non-negotiable way." She was impressed. Ashley in therapy was another shock, but a welcome one. Patricia took longer to come around. For 3 months, she maintained radio silence, communicating only through Robert when absolutely necessary. The family divided into camps, Team James and Team Patricia, though as time passed and Patricia's story kept changing while mine remained consistent, more people quietly switched sides. The breakthrough came, ironically, through the biometric lock system itself. One morning, my app alerted me to an attempted entry. I pulled up the camera feed, expecting to see Patricia trying again. Instead, I saw her standing at my door, not trying to enter, just standing there. She was holding a container of what looked like her famous lasagna, the one she used to make for my birthdays. She stood there for 5 minutes, clearly debating whether to ring the doorbell. Finally, she set the container down on the porch, took out her phone, and I watched her type. Moments later, my phone buzzed. "I made too much lasagna. Thought you might want some. I'm not asking to come in. I know I'm not welcome. But I wanted you to know I'm thinking of you. I'm sorry, Mom." It was the first genuine apology, without qualifiers or guilt trips. I opened the door while she was still in the driveway. "Mom." She turned, surprised. Her face was different, older, tired, but but somehow softer. The lasagna will get cold, I said. She approached slowly, like someone approaching a skittish animal. I'm not expecting. Just the kitchen, I said firmly. Not the office. Just the kitchen, she agreed. We ate lasagna together, mostly in silence. Finally, she said, I've been seeing someone. A counselor. Robert insisted after everything. I waited. She says I have problems with boundaries. That I use guilt as a weapon. That I've never really seen you and Ashley as separate people, just extensions of myself. It was more self-awareness than I'd heard from her in 31 years. I'm not saying I'm fixed, she continued. But I'm working on it. And I wanted to say, the locks. I hate them. They make me feel like you don't trust me. But I understand why you did it. I gave you no choice. No, I agreed. You didn't. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Could we maybe start over? Slowly. With actual boundaries this time. I thought about it. We can try. But the locks stay. The locks stay, she agreed. That was 6 weeks ago. We've had dinner twice since then, both times at restaurants, neutral territory. She hasn't asked about the office once. Ashley joined us for the second dinner, and it was almost pleasant. Almost normal. The biometric lock remains, a silent sentinel protecting my space. But it's become less about keeping people out and more about maintaining the standard that's been set. My boundaries are non-negotiable. My space is my own. My family knows this now, not because I told them, but because I made it physically impossible for them to ignore. My grandmother Elizabeth, the unexpected ally in all this, put it best during our monthly coffee date. You know, James, in my day, we just moved across the country to get away from pushy relatives. Your generation finds more creative solutions. That lock is like a digital moat. I respect that. The office remains my sanctuary. My business has grown 30% this quarter, partly because I can actually focus on work without constant interruptions or drama. The family relationships, while still complicated, are healthier with enforced boundaries than they ever were without them. Looking back, I sometimes wonder if I went too far with the biometric locks. Then I remember Ashley's feet on my desk, Patricia trying to pick my lock, the endless guilt trips and manipulation campaigns. No, I didn't go too far. I went exactly as far as I needed to go. The lock stays. The boundaries stay. And surprisingly, it seems like the family might stay too, just on the right side of the door this time. As I finish typing this, I can hear the soft click of the biometric lock engaging as the system runs its auto-security check. It's become a comforting sound, the sound of a boundary that cannot be crossed without permission. The sound of respect being enforced when it couldn't be earned. Sometimes the best response to guilt trips isn't emotional, it's technological. My mother couldn't guilt trip a fingerprint scanner, and that, ultimately, saved our relationship.